There's something that podcasters are not supposed to say on their episodes. And one of the biggest things you're not supposed to say is, oops, I did it again. I messed up. Or I didn't know what to say. Or I'm trying to sell you something in a way that's heavily driven down a path of like overly salesy or maybe lacking confidence or lacking focus or feels like one of those filler episodes. If you're an anime watcher, then you'll know what I'm talking about. And to be honest, we can't please everybody all the time. We can't even please ourselves. And so I find it as a creator and as the host of this podcast, there's been plenty of episodes where I personally felt were awful, were terrible. And those episodes ended up being some of the most beloved episodes ever. And at the same time, there have been episodes where I felt it bombed and it definitely bombed. But there were also episodes that I thought were great that also bombed. And then there were episodes that I thought were great that were actually great. As I said in the previous episode, there's so many factors that I can't control. I can't control within the next 5 to 10 seconds if you're going to be like, yo, I'm out, or you continue on. Wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening, and in the manner of which you do listen, thank you. I appreciate you. And I hope this episode brings you value. All that to say, if we think about what we create as its own entity, less about what I'm trying to force you to feel and think, and instead take my own advice, pass, present, ask, share, and sway, I'm just going to present what's on my mind today. I'm going to ask you rhetorical questions for you to consider within your own mind. I'm going to share some things, and we're going to sway as we go along on this episode. One thing I want you to keep in mind for this episode, and maybe keep in mind for this week and this month, is this. What is one thing that I can do that is going to improve my situation without depleting my resources? I'm going to ask that one more time. What is one thing I can do that will improve my situation without depleting on my resources? Listen, when it comes to sales pitches, there's the good, there's the not so good, and there's the ones that haunt you as you're trying to fall asleep. To keep your pitches winning you deals, you need that wow factor. And HubSpot has a new resource that can help. There are 3 steps to a perfect pitch. It is your go-to guide for crafting a strategic pitch that works. Inside, you'll find guidance on making a compelling narrative, tips for creating tension, and a blueprint for highlighting your unique value proposition. It's absolutely everything you need to make a first impression your prospects cannot ignore. And by the way, it's completely free. Take your pitch to the next level and start closing more deals today. Visit HubSpot.com/pitch to download the guide for free. Now, to add to that, I want you to really think about this. I've said this millions of times at this point, it feels like. Your 4 currencies: your knowledge, your time, your money, and your skills. What's something we can implement today that doesn't deplete from our resources, but can put us one step closer to a solution to a problem that we need to solve for, or something we need to navigate through, or get a big win? Most times, we're doing the same tactics, which in most cases is we're exchanging time for money. We're exchanging time for opportunity. And we may be so limited in our time, we're pulling from a deficit from other areas that actually needs our time. Our physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional well-being, our family and loved ones, so many other things that actually pull from our time. And when we break down that spreadsheet of our life over 24 hours per day, per week, per month, per quarter, and eventually per year, you might find we've been wasting so much of certain resources that haven't materialized certain things that we want, certain things that we need, certain solutions to problems we have been carrying for months, if not years. And that may not even be professionally. That may not be in business. That may be in your personal life. No, I'm just going to keep it 100 with you. I'm not reading your receipts. If it lands, it lands. If it don't, keep it moving. But I'm trying my level best to reflect where I'm at. But also for us to consider sometimes the problem can be solved simply by looking at something in a totally different direction.
What's up, digital world? You're listening to the I Digress audio experience with Troy Sandidge. Social media, marketing, storytelling, business, culture, and more. Coming to you in 3, 2, 1.
As many of you know, I've been working on conscious growth pathways, as I've been saying about in the previous episodes, for quite some time. And I've had numerous talks on various stages, from Marketech Conference till I'm going to be speaking at Content Marketing World in San Diego in October on this very topic. Get your tickets. There'll be a link in the show notes if you would like a discount. And as I've been building up this runway, as I've also mirrored and when you study a comedian, to get to that Netflix special or that Prime special or whatever the case might be, they do a lot of the same talk tracks in various clubs and comedy clubs and arenas and events to build up the story, see what jokes land the best, has the best flow, wow factor, shock factor, what people remember, what they quote, all those things as they're going through this tour, that when they go big time and they put it all together for their big special, it's a big hit. And that's what I've been trying to do with this set of conscious growth pathways. And my 4 E's being experiential, empowerment, education, and entertainment as the catalyst for driving effective marketing to compel people to take action, to buy, to be an advocate, to be an elevator, to be a supporter of what you're trying to do, which allows you not only to grow, but grow in a sustainable and scalable way, protecting you and your assets from depreciation and your business from falling into the abyss of no return. A lot of strong statements there, but I truly believe that foundation, that nucleus, is going to be the key to business success moving forward, as the demand for purpose-driven brands is itemized to a point now, whereas if you're not relevant to me and my ideals, I will not buy from you. I don't care if you're the cheapest. It's not as a strong enough benefit or differential factor as it used to be. If my resolve is so strong, I will pay more for something else and pull from another bucket to do it because I don't have an affinity to your brand. And that's a fact. And that's reality. And that's something that we all need to update ourselves about. It's not about being the cheapest. It's not about pushing the most ads out. It's not about a certain number of followers on TikTok. It's not about a certain number of views on YouTube. It's not about who's the influencer we can collaborate with or who's the celebrity who can be an advocate for us. There's a lot of brands who are paying big-time celebrities a lot of money to run campaigns that are irrelevant to their new audience, and they're not making enough money. They're actually losing money from the ads that they're launching. And so to save themselves money, they cut the ads off altogether, and they do what they can. One thing I've been working on, and this is going to get a little bit nerdy, but stay with me here. There was a study of a question. I won't dive into deep detail of the question because I don't want to spoil everything and give away all of my tea for the presentation I'm working on. But I am going to test this out and see what you all think. I'm excited for you to experience this and see where I'm going. There was a question on the SATs that had no correct answer. And yet, at the same time, it had an answer that was correct. But here's the thing. To put this in the most lamest of terms, the question simply said, this one circle is 1/3 a radius of this other circle. How many rotations would it take the smaller circle to get around the bigger circle? If you took it from a literal visual perspective, you could rotate the circle around and you would get an answer of 4 rotations. Now, here's the crazy thing about math and vantage points. And I wish I could articulate this for you visually, but I don't want to spoil all the tea from my presentation. But I think it's still going to land. When you literally look at it from the vantage point of you're inside of this big circle and you're seeing this small circle rotate around it, similar to if you were to zoom out and you were an astronaut and you had the ability to look at the moon rotating around the Earth. From the outside perspective, it would take more rotations for the moon to rotate around the Earth. But if for somehow you were able to stand on the Earth atmosphere while looking at the moon rotate, it would literally take less rotations from your vantage point. Both vantage points are right mathematically. But at the same time, if you compare where you are, it could be wrong. Now, taking that same analogy and applying that to a math problem that you're supposed to solve for. Imagine you're launching a marketing campaign. You're doing sales initiatives. You are pushing an MVP, but the foundation, the nucleus, the copy, the infrastructure is faulty. And no matter what celebrity you use to spotlight it, no matter how much money you spent to push it out there on the world, no matter how much time you spent on the creation or the research, if you have faulty parts, it will not work. It was destined to fail before you even started. They were taking the SAT test with this question with a series of multiple choice answers which were all mathematically wrong from that vantage point of the student. So no one was ever going to get the answer right. But from the higher ups who were grading this, they had a different vantage point, which they're saying, yes, this makes sense. And so they're not alarmed at the fact that everyone is getting this question wrong. So what does that tell you? Even when you collect first-party data and you do your market research and your social listening analysis and you compile all these different reports together for your board meetings and your war room meetings and your evaluations, there's a chance that what you're using to measure against is wrong, which means your whole direction and your viewpoint to interpret your audience, to interpret the marketplace, to interpret how you see and navigate things as a business, as an entity, as a department, as a leader could be wrong, which by domino effect creates problems, which we blame other things for because we have miscommunication, misinterpretation, and misunderstanding of how to navigate what we're doing because our starting point was off. Whew. Let's take a deep breath. The Product Boss, hosted by Jacqueline Snyder and Mina Kunlo-Sitep, is brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. Featured in Inc. as the country's most sought-after product experts, Jacqueline and Mina deliver a workshop-style strategy hour of social media and marketing strategies so you can up-level as the boss of your business, as the boss that you are. As women entrepreneurs and product experts, they blend life as a boss mom and female business owner in this ever-changing online world having its ups and downs. With episodes like My Sales Are Down 30%, How Do I Get More People to Discover My Brand? To From Burning Out to Burning Bright, How to Master Your Mindset to Overcome Burnout, and so many other episodes. Learn how to take your physical product sales and strategies to the next level to create your dream life with host Jacqueline and Mina. Listen to The Product Boss wherever you get your podcasts. So if your starting point is off, which leads to everything else being off, and it doesn't have to be by much. 1 degree off is going to get you to turn massively different down the road. We know this. This is not a big mathematical thing. This is the basic level stuff. Stick with me. And I'm always thinking, how do we start off on the right foot in the hopes of positioning ourselves for the best opportunities and the maximum ROI from it? Some people fact check, triple check, quadruple check their data. And they scrub and they scrub and they test against. So all good things, but I'm going to challenge you and do something a little bit deeper. In my example, a real world example with the students and the people over the SATs, over this question that is from both vantage points. One, there's no right answer. On the other vantage point, technically there is a right answer, but the question itself is the problem. How the question is worded. It is worded in the way where it is maybe understood from the SAT organizers, but not understood from the SAT takers. And this is where I talked about from the previous episode, going above and beyond leveraging language to launch is not enough to speak the same language. Is the interpretation of what you're saying aligned with both parties can see where you're trying to go to both provide the best way forward? The question is written in English. The person reading the question can understand English, but the interpretation of the meaning behind what you're asking me in the question is flawed in a way where I'm always destined to get it wrong as a test taker. And you may even struggle to validate the answer being correct from the question as the organizer. Something so simple, guaranteed failure across the board. But your mind is saying, I don't know why. By our data, by all accounts, by our interpretation of what we're saying, it should be right. But who has the money? Who has the decision power? Who do you need to keep your business going? Who do you need to keep the lights on? It's the test taker. Or in this case, it is those who are consuming your website, your copy. It means nothing if you understand what you're saying and know the intent by what you're saying and how you want it to come across if those who are consuming, who are listening, who are watching, who are reading, who are engaging does not. So we have to work twice as hard to ensure that we guide the person to the right interpretation of what we're saying, of what we're asking, to then, off that merit, garnish data against it over a period of time to see how do we improve to maximize our ROI and our action taking abilities. And that is the part, that little piece right there is where a lot of marketers fail, sales fail, brand fails, leadership fails, operations fails. Because if we're taking those 5 pieces, put on a circle, and we're making a note, and we put a line to each part within the circle. So we just cut the circle into 5 pieces. Everyone's vantage point, and let's say all 5 pieces are equal percentages. Every single one from their vantage point is saying we're doing everything we know how to do. This checks mark every box that we've done. This should work. 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 And yet, when you get to the center, there's chaos and there's disconnection because it's not enough for us to have our own language and meta and data and KPIs and OKRs and measurements of ROI within that department if it doesn't fit in the puzzle piece the right way for the next one to do what they need to do and work in harmony for all of us to get the bigger picture. We need all of them to fit perfectly and work in harmony and be in flow to make things work coherently. Which, in most cases, when people bring me into the conversation, I'm the villain of the story. I just shake it all up. I ask why a million times and get very granular on, hey, you're saying you need to get 27% increase in growth by the end of the year. Up to this point, you're at 15. You've done way better than previous year already. And based off your trajectory, you should be where you need to be by now. But for some reason, you're not. You have little to no changeover of your team. Your community is just as engaging as ever. You've analyzed external factors to a degree. You're operating in the best way possible. You're moving as lean as you can. No massive, pulls for money. And yet, no matter what we're doing, we've increased this effort of content creation, or we've increased this effort of paid advertising, we've increased this effort of brand positioning. We've actually hired more people to drive in more sales or drive in more marketing, and we just can't get over a certain threshold. When it comes to fitness, that is very clear where you hit a certain threshold where your body you're not getting enough resistance to change anymore because it's strong enough where it's just normal. It hasn't peaked. It hasn't broken through. It hasn't been challenged. And so sometimes it's not the matter of what you're doing. Maybe you're doing too much of something. Maybe we need to challenge ourselves and do something completely different. Now, I don't know what different looks like for you. That takes conversations. And sometimes it takes you to talk to people outside of your bubble, completely outside of the circle, to get that external view and saying, how many rotations is it to get around? See what I did there? Versus your vantage point saying, my view says, I should be there by now. And if at every crossroad we're missing the goal by one rotation, those things add up. So it's not enough to have a 360-degree view. You need to not have a 3D level, but a 4D level understanding of how you fit within your universe and ecosystem of your marketplace and beyond it. It's not enough to know your archetype for today. As more generations with buying power are increasing and stretching out their values of why they would choose you over someone else, you have to step outside of your bubble to see, am I missing one rotation? Are we one rotation off our trajectory of our next level of growth and sustainability? Is it possible that we need to modify and adjust something we literally can't see because we're not asking the right questions to see? Digital marketers, this one's for you. I've got 30 seconds to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises. So here are a few things you can do in 30 seconds or less when you manage projects on Wix Studio. Work in sync with your team on one canvas. Reuse templates, widgets, and sections across sites. Create a client kit for seamless handovers and leverage best-in-class SEO defaults across all your Wix sites. Looks like time's up, but the list keeps going. Step into Wix Studio to see more. Visit wix.com/studio today. When I'm trying to grow this podcast, the math says do more episodes, you get more leverage of consistency, you get more trust, you get more listen time, it gets you to more people listen, you post more about it, more people are aware that you've posted an episode, aware that you even have a podcast to begin with, and they start to listen. If you give snippets of what those episodes do, they may be more inclined to continue to listen because they want to get to that soundbite section that they heard that they enjoyed. It's kind of like a trailer in a movie. They see certain scenes. I'm watching the movie to get to the scenes that interested me. And are we doing that with our content to show our hand for people to decide which cards they want? And they're going to watch the whole game to see the cards be revealed on play. And so that's the same thing I apply with my podcast. And even still, I may hit plateaus of like, ooh, I spiked in growth and then I dipped, or I plateaued, or I'm flat. But if I compare it over a longer period of time, you're actually doing very well. It's the same thing with investments. I stack it up over a period of time. Wow, I'm doing really well. If I was looking at it daily from that perspective based off my portfolio and investment advice, I would lose my mind. Oh, this day went up, this day went down, this day went up by 5. And every day we as business owners and leaders and executive teams and department heads, entrepreneurs are looking at our numbers, creators too. We're looking at our numbers daily and wondering, oh, I'm happy. Oh, I'm not happy. Oh, I'm happy. Oh, I'm not happy. And it is not a good look to have your whole day on the fluctuation of a billion things outside of your control that's driving someone to buy, to listen, to watch, to read, to click, to join, to activate, to book a time to talk, all those things. So we have to find a sustainable way where we can measure and monitor interactions and touch points without being so narrow-minded or so obsessive that we don't take a breather and go up and wide and out to get those viewpoints, to get a clear picture of, are we successful or not? And this is also a very important thing to do when you are someone who has to present reports to the executive team, to the business, to the board, to your stockholders. Yes, give me your specific view, but make sure you back that up with views outside of the initial vantage point for context. When people have context to be able to compare and contrast, psychologically makes everything easier to absorb because you have a placeholder of source material to anchor yourself to in retrospective to what is being said, what is being shown, what is being shared. So if I were to say, my podcast, as it is right now, is in the top 0.001% of podcasts in the world, as it is right now. Powerful, right? Ooh, I should use that to pitch for more sponsors. I should use that to validate the podcast, right? And at the same time, for context, my anchor point for my trajectory of growth is different than someone who started their podcast yesterday. They're hoping for 100 people to maybe listen to their episode over a week or a month or even a quarter if they just got it started. Whereas for me, I may accumulate 1,500 to 2,500 to maybe at times 3,500 listeners within one day. And yet and still, the gauge of what I'm measuring myself on is looking at podcasters that are accumulating what I do in a year in a month. Or dare I even say, some of them may do what I do in a year, they do in a day. Now, you may say, well, Troy, that's not fair to compare your podcast to their podcast. They're getting the download numbers that you've generated for a year within a day. That's extreme difference. And yet and still, many executives and marketers and leaders have the audacity to compare themselves and the opportunity of growth and the speed at which it will grow to those who are 10x, 50x, 100x bigger, more well-known, more budget than you ever can. I'm all about having zeal, but make sure your zeal is not misguided or misplaced. When you have that anchor in that context, you can anchor yourself just how I've done. Wow, Troy, your podcast is doing good. And I can flip it and anchor it to something else. Wow, your podcast isn't doing as good. And if we pull off the negative energy of anchoring off of things that are always showing the business in a bad light, your marketing in a bad light, your sales in a bad light, your whole culture and ecosystem in a bad light, that's going to control the emotional triggers to be always in that program of thinking and viewpoint. And sometimes, y'all, as much as you may push people to grow and try to make more money and push things along and whip, go, 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 go. Sometimes you got to take a pause, take a break, let's reset, and let's see what we're going to do. Sometimes we have to anchor ourselves to celebrate. Here's where we were. Here's where we are now. We might not have lost all 80 pounds, but guess what? We lost 25. That's more than what we lost all last year. We actually gained 5. And now we've lost 25 within the span of less of the time that we gained the 5. 25. That's an impressive anchor point in a certain vantage point in view. Psychologically anchoring us to take a deep breath, to relax, to be excited, to keep going. But the fuel that's compelling us to keep going is positivity. It's encouragement, which doesn't drain us. It adds on. It fuels us in a good way versus nervousness, anxiousness. We have high anxiety about this, which keeps us up at night, keeps us stressed. We're maximizing more of our time resource than we should, which isn't even helping us get to where we want to go. So, when we look at the viewpoints here, this is where conscious growth pathways come in. Are you conscious enough of how we define our growth and where we're growing and in the manner of which we're growing? And does that growth matter? How are we conceptualizing the growth to ourselves internally as far as rotations and externally as far as rotations? And is there an overlap? Is there a big gap? Are we missing something? Do we need to add something to it? These are the questions and the things I need you to think about as you're pivoting and shifting or starting, launching, and growing. Those anchor points matter. They literally determine if you're going to get more funding. They determine if you're going to get more marketing push for your value dollars. They determine if you're going to get more buy-in from your culture of that being your team. You could be doing all the right things, but you're on the hamster wheel going nowhere fast because the anchor points that you're using to guide your team is misguided, causing more inflection of stress and anxiety and anger and anguish than necessary. My business life coach, Shauna, he had a great session a long time ago, and it changed how I look at things. And maybe you need to ask yourself this rhetorical question too and sit with it for a while after the episode. For the longest time, I would be driving myself crazy, chasing immensely hard, audacious goals. Because I felt if I didn't take the hardest side of the mountain, I wasn't worthy of success. I wasn't worthy of claiming a certain thing. It's admirable to take the pain and the structure. Well, who said you had to do that? Who said you just could take the easy way? Most people only care about the result. You don't have to do it the hard way by choice. If that's your lot, but you don't have to do it by choice. You get no additional brownie points. You get no additional sales because it was harder for you to do than the easy ones. Especially if the monetary value is the same. Give me the easy ones all day long. I don't have to suffer to get something necessarily. If most cases, it may require a certain level of sacrifice and struggle and resistance maybe, but you don't have to go down that path every time just because what you did to get to your first million felt like that. But maybe when you get to your next 10 million, it's going to be a little easier because you have a bigger team. You're maybe more well known. You have your MVP, your purpose, your mission, your value of your product, of your service, of your offering more refined. So therefore, it should be easier to connect, grow, and scale. And so, to my point, I was pulling from a place of I need to prove myself constantly, versus I'm good at this and it makes an impact in the world. And we called it, are you pulling from your Batman energy or your Superman energy? Are you pulling from the Batman repository or the Superman repository? Does the only way you get to where you need to go is through darkness, struggle, and pain and challenges and it's me against the world mentality? Or what a great opportunity to drive impact, share my value, and for those who want to buy from me, who want to listen to me, they will identify themselves and go ahead and do it. Technically speaking, you're doing the same effort, but the anchor point, the energy you're pulling from, the vantage point when you're looking at internal view of the rotations versus the external view of the rotations matters. Because if you burns more energy to get the same result versus someone burning less energy to get the same result, the one that burns less energy, that retains the resources but maximizes for the greatest output is going to last versus those who burn the most energy, utilizes most of the resources, trying to maintain the same amount of output and outcomes, but eventually you'll gradually see the percentages change. And one going up and up and up, and one takes a curve and goes down. And it may be a long stretch. Both of those lines are running in parallel until they don't. And it could be a massive shock and just a massive drop fall down because we didn't take the time to consider the other viewpoints. We didn't take the time to be conscious enough as where do our growth paths interject? Where do they run in parallel? What's feeding our growth? What's our anchor point in comparison to where we're trying to go versus where we are versus where we want to be? And is it healthy? Is it sustaining? Is it in ways that are scalable to us that we can maintain over long periods of time? And in the world of business, things change so much now, and so many mannerisms and things, we have to constantly make sure our anchor point is solid, but aligned to what's relevant and updated for today's challenges, demands, needs, and wants, and not what we're anchoring on in previous times long ago. Back to the GPS versus the roadmap. Ditch the roadmap, turn on the GPS. We're going to have a higher chance of achieving greater trajectory and greater growth. Are you an aspiring entrepreneur or business savvy individual ready to take matters into your own hands? Imagine starting a new venture with low startup costs, entering a growing market, and having the opportunity to shape your own future. Picture that you're at the helm of a successful delivery business, partnering with one of the world's most prominent companies, Amazon, through their Amazon Delivery Service program. They are searching for hands-on leaders with grit and determination, people who are ready to hire, coach, and motivate a top-notch team of delivery associates. Maybe people like you. And here's the thing, you don't need logistics experience. You'll gain access to exclusive deals, services, training, business coaching, and state-of-the-art technology. As you launch and grow your business, you'll have the support of Amazon's team at every step. So, are you ready to build the future of delivery and embark on a rewarding journey with the Amazon Delivery Service Partner Program? Learn more and apply right now by going to amazon.com/radio. That's amazon.com/radio. And you can also click on the link in the show notes as well. Take the first step toward a brighter future today. All by making these incremental changes and making sure we're moving in the right direction, but having the right vantage points. Now, to garnish the right vantage points and viewpoints, sometimes we have to attract. And the attracting of the right audiences to get the right vantage points and viewpoints in the first place requires us to be entertaining, not just educational. It requires both. If you're too entertaining, that means you're on trend, but you're not providing enough value for me to do anything. But, you were good to look at. Or if you're too educational, you could be bringing value, but it's so boring, I don't really get to see you because you're not aligning with what's trending to be entertaining. And yet, and still with those two combined, you still need to empower me. do something, and you still need to have a unique experience that I only get from you. There could be millions of TikTok dancer leaders out there in the world, but maybe your unique experience brings me a different type of value that I don't get from other places, which is empowering for me to continue to consume your particular content. Everyone who knows me knows I am a sports fan. Everybody knows I have it on ESPN every day. I love me some First Take, and I love me some Stephen A. Smith. Many people would say I emulate him. In many cases, when you see me in person talking about sports, there are a plethora of people who give very well educated and entertaining takes on sports news and reality with correlation between sports and culture. But I have an affinity to Stephen A. Smith. Put some respect on his name. And I look for his takes, literally and metaphorically speaking, because I have the 4 E's tied into him when I want that certain value prop. Now, you may be wanting somebody else, and there's a plethora of other people. Because I said his name, you could be rolling your eyes right now, and that creates a certain affinity or perception of, oh, I didn't know that side of Troy. Or, ooh, like, you're a Cowboys fan. Oh, goodness, you're a Cowboys fan. Oh, you're a Bears fan. Oh, you're a Bears fan. We have all these other plethora of things that creates perception of how we view a certain thing, a certain situation, or a certain business, and a certain person in our anchor points to what we hold in high regard. Just because I just said Stephen A. Smith, where you may regard someone else in high regard as your news anchor of choice or commentator of choice, may change the trajectory of how you see me, which is okay. That happens all the time. But let's not be naive to think that doesn't impact and work in the same way when it comes to your business. You could be doing everything right, garnishing attention, putting out consistently content, doing the deep research to bring in the big value, and you're still not connecting because their anchor points of who they consider to be XYZ is nowhere near you and what you're trying to do and where you're trying to be. So that means we have to find the groups of people who see us in a certain way to even have a chance to win their hearts to buy for our business. It's not as simple as zeros and ones. You live in America, you live in Australia, you live in China, you live in this state or this location, you buy this, you enjoy this, you watch this, therefore you're my ideal audience type, buy from me, and then you push and wonder, why is it not working? Back to the math problem of, this should be X amount of rotations, but their vantage point is, no, it's this amount of rotations, and we're not speaking to each other properly, and we're off. And where does that leave us? Where do we go from here? What are we going to do? Conscious growth pathways gives us an enlightened sense of how to view ourselves in retrospective to how our ideal audience may view us, whilst at the same time anchoring, are we even seeking the right people's approval to buy our product in the first place? It's not even about if we're saying the right things, doing the right things, producing the right things, creating the right things all across the board. If at no matter what we're doing, those individuals were never going to buy from you, ever. So we just did all this for nothing. And then you sit there, and that's why a lot of businesses fail. It's not that they didn't have good ideas, it's not that they didn't have the work ethic, it's not that they couldn't maybe get the funding. It all didn't come together to compel the right people to buy at a certain rate to keep you in business, to grow in business, and scale in business. And those are the facts. If we could learn the foundational pieces for growth pathways to be more successful before we build out extensive MVPs or launch heavily guarded marketing and sales campaigns or partner with very expensive influencers, or maybe doing sponsors for the I Digress podcast experience, we'd be a lot better. Does this change anything for you? Sure, change things for me. I realize I've done enough episodes now where, yes, I built a brand and a name for myself in the podcast I've built off of giving basics. But over the period of time, as I've learned and evolved and grown, so has my audience. And yes, I am retaining people, but I'm getting new people who may not know, but also getting new people who know enough and want to be challenged and want to know more. So therefore, I need to elevate my level of articulation and themes and topics to reflect back the demand of what my audience wants, and not just set myself up to saying, I'm going to give you the basics of marketing strategy, business, and growth for another 200 episodes. Keep listening. If it's not connecting and not landing and not converting and not working, we have to go up for air and look at different vantage points to confirm where we are. Is it working? Is it not working? How long do we project this to work? Is our projections off? Are they wrong? Is the whole data wrong? Now, I don't want to trigger anyone to have to go through the beginning and try to cross-examine their data and their whole existence of a business in a million and one ways. No, I'm not pushing for that. I am asking you to just simply consider factors beyond your normal operational procedure to make sure that over a certain period of time, if we've done everything that we claim we've done and we're still not getting the results that we desire, either our anchor point to our goal is too high and we don't have the capacity ever to reach it until something changes, or we're speaking to the wrong people who have maxed out on what we're trying to do, or we might be obsolete in the way as which we're presenting ourselves and need to reinvent ourselves to make us relevant again to audiences that are compelled and ready to buy right now. Those are the areas and manners in which we need to consider, adjust, question, modify, and grow in. And I guarantee you, if you start doing those things, you will have clarity. And with clarity, you will have direction. And with direction, you'll be able to cultivate and drive action that has a higher chance of success to convert over and over again, leading to, once again, more sustainable and then scalable opportunities. So if you enjoyed this episode, let me know. Tag me at Find Troy. I'm not kidding. I'm here to connect. I'm here to conversate. I want to grow with you, and I want you to grow with me. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Digress. What was your takeaway? Care to share your thoughts and tag Troy on social media? You can find him on all platforms at Find Troy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review or comment for this episode from wherever you're listening. Looking for a marketing strategist to build the structure, strategies, and systems you need to get the success you want and the ROI you desire in your business? Book a discovery call to talk with Troy at findtroy.com. And as Troy's philosophy goes, imagination is the engine, content is the fuel, social media is the highway, marketing is the roadmap, sales is the destination, culture is the GPS. Thanks for listening.